Good morning, everyone, and it's my great pleasure and honor to be here. I have to say that I have learned so much over the last few days, and I hope to learn even more. Learn and listen. That's one of the things I heard last night, and that's what I've been trying to do. So by way of background, I have been at the National Institutes of Health now for just about 5 years. Before that, I was working with a small nonprofit organization, the Tuberous Sclerosis Alliance, because my nephew was diagnosed when he was 3 months old with that genetic disorder. And so many times now at the NIH, I'm accused of being too much of an advocate, but that's okay. I'll take that. I think that's a good thing to be. But I came to MECFS, as we refer to it in the United States, by way of a program director I had just started. He was retiring. He had 2 small grants that he was overseeing on ME and said, I'm leaving. We need somebody to take these grants. Would you mind? And I said, sure. 2 grants, that's not a big deal. I was actually hired to oversee grants on epilepsy and to build the epilepsy program, and I thought 2 grants out of 150 other grants, that's not a big deal. Well, those 2 grants have now grown into a larger, although I can't say large portfolio of grants. But what it's led to is some things that I'll talk to you about today, about, I think, what is a new dawn and a new vision for research on ME in the United States. So, to start with, just to give you some background about the National Institutes of Health, so it's one agency within our Health and Human Services agency within the government of the United States, and the mission is to seek fundamental knowledge about the nature and behavior of living systems and the application of that knowledge to enhance health, lengthen life, and reduce illness and disability. So NIH is made up of 27 different institutes and centers, and each one has a specific mission. So I am located within the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke, and so our institute specifically focuses on diseases and actually also just basic science of the nervous system, how the nervous system functions and how it dysfunctions in light of a disease of the nervous system. So within NIH, there is research that actually happens on the NIH campus, which is in Bethesda, Maryland, and that is called our intramural, so the internal program. And so there are laboratories there that do research on a number of different disease areas and really collaborate very nicely on the campus. I'm a part of what we call the extramural program, and that's the part of NIH where we send money out of NIH to fund research in academic institutions, small businesses across the United States, and actually around the world as well. So one of the things, so I'll back up a minute, and so when I got involved with overseeing grants on MECFS, there was a TransNIH working group, which were representatives from many different institutes at NIH who were to come together and work together to foster and really move forward research on MECFS. That group met once in 4 years. So there's a problem. And about a year ago now, there was, I think, a whole convergence of things that happened in terms of really several of us who were on that committee becoming quite impatient that nothing was happening, that we weren't meeting, with the lack of understanding across NIH of the importance and the severity of MECFS. And so actually Francis Collins, and there were several researchers, including Ron Davis, who really brought this to the attention of the director of NIH and said, this is not acceptable. And so actually from the top at NIH, Dr. Collins said, there needs to be a sea change. And one of the things he said is we need an intramural study, so a study at NIH on ME/CFS. And this is now being led by Dr. Nath, who's the clinical director at NINDS. And this study will be started this summer, but what they're going to do is to identify 40 individuals with ME who are within 5 years of post-infectious ME and really do a deep dive, so really analyze everything they can think to analyze and take specimens that can then be utilized by other researchers as well. And so the importance of this is a couple things. It's a small group of people, yes, but it's a start. And the plan is that this would be expanded then to additional individuals with ME/CFS, as well as expand the studies to other institutions and make the samples available. But I think just the statement that the NIH will have a study is really important within NIH to show the importance of this disease. So the other thing that Francis Collins asked is that we revitalize the working group. And so it's now chaired by my boss, Walter Corashet, who's a neurologist, and he's the director of our institute. And I think it's really important to note that he is a really intelligent, compassionate man, and he, in his practice when he was at Mass General, cared for individuals with ME/CFS, so he understands. And so we never have to explain or say to him, this is important. He knows it's important. So he's chairing the working group, and I'm helping to coordinate that. I'm the boots on the ground, in other words, the worker bee. And we now have representatives from 24 of the different institutes, offices, and centers across NIH. And it has really been a truly, really humbling and wonderful experience working with these people who I think were just as frustrated as I was that nothing was happening and have really rolled up their sleeves to work with us and to work together. We're developing goals and strategies to stimulate and support research, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So this is, I think, difficult to read, but it's just to point out to you that the way we started was to begin by taking stock in where we were at and to say, what are some things that we can get done right away? And what are some things that are going to take us a little bit longer, so our intermediate goals? And what are then some long-term goals, which are a little broad at this point, but I think our whole idea is that we want to be flexible and meet the needs of the research community and the ME/CFS stakeholders as we move forward. But some of the things that we've done, first of all, was, and as you can imagine, working in government is sometimes a little bit frustrating in terms of how long it takes things to get done and get through a system. But one of the things we were able to do right away was to put out a call for grants for supplements. And what this means is that anyone who already has NIH funding can request additional funds to supplement the work they're doing. So either expand the research in their lab, or what we've heard from several individuals now is it's individuals that are working in other areas. So someone who really has a focus on fibromyalgia has a great idea or a great new assay that they want to now test for ME in ME research. And so it's a way to get some funds into the system quickly. We've fostered collaboration across the agencies, and I have to say one of the things that was a little startling to me when I got involved in this, and I'm now the NIH representative to the HHS CFS Advisory Committee. So this is the National Advisory Committee that is run through the National Health and Human Services offices and has members, and then we as government officials are ex officio members. But there was really no communication and discussion between the federal agencies. The people at the FDA weren't talking to the CDC, weren't talking to us at the NIH. And so we just held a follow-up meeting to a workshop that was held back in December of 2014 to work out ways in which we can really collaborate and move things forward together with utilizing and leveraging the resources that each of the agencies has. And I think this will be really, helpful to moving things forward. We are working on setting research priorities, and we released a request for information, and I'll give you that email where anyone can send input to us to really get a sense of, and I've gotten a wonderful sense of the field and where things are at by being at this conference and talking to both the caregivers who are here and as well as the researchers and clinicians, but really being able to set priorities in terms of research as we move forward. And I think importantly, as Ian was pointing out, to set some international collaborations. And it doesn't make sense to duplicate what's happening in other parts of the world, but how can we work together and collaborate to really move this forward in a meaningful way? So one of the things we did was to take a look at what research had been funded on ME/CFS, and it's actually pretty shocking and disappointing when you look at this. So over the years, funding for ME/CFS research has averaged somewhere between 5 to 6 million with a few dips in there, but that's actually pretty pathetic for a disease that affects as many people as it does in the United States and worldwide. The epilepsy portfolio that I oversee, we fund about $156 million on epilepsy, and so there's just so much room for growth here, and I hope that in the next couple of years, when I hopefully come back to this meeting, I can show you that we're off the charts. So that's my wish and my vision. So let's stay tuned. And this is just to show you that at NIH, research is funded across many of these different institutes and primarily funded by NIAID, so we love acronyms in the U.S. government, but that stands for the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease. So they have funded by and large the most research on ME/CFS, followed by our institute, NINDS, and then smaller amounts from many of the different institutes. And we also hope that we can grow this percentage in some of the other institutes and get them very involved. So in terms of the request for information, what we would like is for people to tell us what they think are the emerging needs and opportunities that should be considered. And again, this is meant to help us really understand where the opportunities are, what are the challenges and barriers, and where can we best prioritize the research dollars that we have. And we know that the community in the United States is asking for $250 million on research, and that would be a lovely goal. Where that's not going to happen overnight, we've got to work together to build to that. But this, we really need to think about carefully about where the dollars go and how we can best prioritize. So some of our intermediate goals is that we're really working to strategize how to foster research. And one of the things that we've just gotten approved is a concept. So in government speak, that means that I represented the TransNIH working group and got approval to move forward with funding or putting in place a request for applications to put a consortium in place. So this is meant to really bring together the best researchers in the United States into a consortium where they're doing shared research, shared protocols, enabling and supporting research at academic centers in the United States. And one of the things that was pretty shocking when we looked at what had been funded was that NIH has never funded any junior investigators. So all of the research that's been funded has been to more senior investigators, which means that we're missing building a whole new generation of researchers in the United States. And so that's one of the areas that we're hoping that this kind of a consortium will help to really foster. And one of the things that will be really important, and we've heard this loud and clear from the patient community, is to include patient and advocate engagement in this consortium, so they'll be very actively involved at all levels of planning and implementing of this consortium. So stay tuned for more information about that. So then our longer term goals, as I said, are pretty broad, but I think ultimately it's to improve the quality of life for all individuals with ME/CFS. And so we're hoping to support and really expand our research in the United States and in collaboration with researchers around the world. We want to support the development of new therapies and treatments and support clinical trials, because we really see the huge need there is for both better understanding of what's causing ME/CFS, as well as building for new treatments and ways in which to improve lives. So I'll stop there. That's my email address, and I'm very happy to hear from any of you with any questions or comments you might have. And also this is the email where you can send your responses to the request for information. And we would love to hear from any and all of you in terms of what do you see as the priorities? What is most important to you? And one of the things that's been very interesting is talking to the people at the FDA in terms of what would they want to see as an outcome in a clinical trial. And what they've told us is they want to know that the treatment helped someone in their daily life. So it doesn't matter if you scored 3 points better on this test or you increased your blood levels of something, but did it make a difference in your life? And so that's where we're aiming, is to really help make a difference in people's lives. So I hope when I come back that I have much more to report to you, and I would love to hear from all of you. So thank you very much for allowing me to be here today, and I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
The CFSAC
Yes.
has really gone backwards in terms of the quality of communication. For example, the CFSAC meetings used to be broadcast. We could tune into them from over here, this side of the pond. Can't do that anymore. And it's really, it's frustrating that it's gone backwards. The technology exists, and we see all sorts of excuses being made as to why the CFSAC can't be broadcast as a webinar, and it's not good enough.
Could you say a little more about that? Some people might not know about that.
The Chronic Fatigue Syndrome Advisory Committee. So I don't know how frequently they meet. Every quarter, is it?
No, we meet twice a year. Twice a year, typically once in person in Washington, D.C., and once by conference call.
Okay. So about probably 2 years ago, I got the feeling that the CFSAC were starting to get somewhere, and I was tuning in to their meetings. I watched them quite diligently, and I felt that there was a real positive move forward. But in the last 2 years, there have been problems with the broadcasts. People at the last one were complaining that they couldn't even get sound. So the technology, there hasn't been enough focus on ensuring that people can tune into these things. It's a PR matter.
I hear your concern. To be honest, I was not aware that was happening. So I will definitely take that back and make sure that the next meeting will be in the fall. And that will be a in-person meeting. But I will take that back to the HHS headquarters that runs the advisory committee, because on behalf of them, I apologize for that, but I honestly was not aware that that difficulty existed.
Meet Vicky over coffee or lunch or something. And
Yeah, yeah.
and then
Thank you.
Get information back.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. One other question. John, I'll take two. Yeah. Yes, at the back. Yes, over at the back. And then someone over here. Yeah.
More than anything else, we need clinical trials of drugs. There are already some drugs that we could trial, but those of us in trying to design clinical trials have problems with outcome measures. In this room, there must be people with the experience of treating people with ME who could pull their experience of outcome measures. And could the NIH help in any way to kind of foster a collaboration or some kind of consortium thinking about outcome measures?
Yes, and that's actually something we've had extensive discussions with both the CDC and the FDA. And one of the projects we're going to be launching is something called common data elements that really will look at, for each aspect of ME, what are the tests that are being done, what are the outcome measures, and how could those be used in research and in clinical trials. And I would love to have involvement of people here in Europe who have experience with ME participate in that process. And I mean, I think that ideally around the world would be using the same outcome measures so that trials and studies could be launched worldwide, could be compared worldwide. So thank you for that question and comment, and we'll work toward that, absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you very, very much, Vicky. That sounds really positive.
Thank you.